The dust cloud rising behind her was the first thing Irving noticed as he rode into the ramshackle trading post on the edge of Nebraska territory in the spring of 1867. And when he dismounted to water his horse, he saw her standing there with nothing but a worn canvas bag and determination etched into every line of her sun-weathered face. She couldn't have been more than 22 or 23, with honey-colored hair pulled back in a practical braid and eyes the color of sage after rain. Her dress had seen better days, patched at the elbows and hem, but she stood straight-backed like she owned the world. Samuel removed his hat and approached the water trough where she filled a tin cup. "Afternoon, miss," he said, keeping his distance to be respectful. She looked up, assessing him with a quick glance that took in his travel-stained clothes, the horse that had clearly covered many miles, and the honest wear on his boots. "Afternoon. Long way out here for traveling alone," he ventured, watching as his horse drank deeply. "I am not staying," she said plainly, "just passing through. Heading somewhere particular, California." She said it like it was already decided, like the 2,000 miles between here and there were nothing but a minor inconvenience. Samuel blinked. "That is a far piece." "You got family meeting you, a wagon train." "No." She set down the cup and picked up her bag. "I will walk if I have to." "Walk?" "Madam, that is," he stopped himself from saying impossible, because the set of her jaw told him she had already heard every reason why she could not do it. "That is quite an undertaking." "Perhaps." She started walking, heading west like she could see California from right where she stood. Samuel watched her go, this slip of a woman with one bag and more courage than sense, and something in his chest twisted. He had been heading west himself, drifting after the war had ended and his family's Missouri farm had been burned to nothing. California had seemed as good a destination as any. He mounted his horse and rode after her. "Hold on," he called out. She stopped and turned, wariness creeping into her expression. "I am not interested in company that will slow me down or expect anything." "I am heading to California too," Samuel said, which was true enough. "Seems foolish for us both to travel alone when we are going the same direction." "I said I would walk to California alone. And I am saying you do not have to be alone. I am going that direction too." He swung down from his horse and walked it beside her. "Name is Samuel Irving. People call me Sam." She studied him for a long moment, and he could see her weighing the dangers of traveling with a stranger against the dangers of traveling without any help at all. Finally, she said, "Sophia Hart, and I do not need protection. Never said you did. But another set of eyes when you sleep, someone to help if you twist an ankle or run into trouble, that is just practical." He kept his voice easy, non-threatening. "Fine," Sophia said, "but I will not slow down for you, and if you prove to be trouble, I will shoot you." Samuel noticed she did not actually have a gun visible, but he nodded seriously anyway. "Fair enough." They walked in silence for the better part of an hour, Samuel leading his horse beside her. The Nebraska plains stretched out in every direction, grass rolling like an ocean. The sky was so big it made him feel small, but in a good way, like his problems were small too. Finally, curiosity got the better of him. "What is in California? A future," Sophia said shortly, running from something or running to something. She cut him a sharp look. "Does it matter?" "I suppose not, just making conversation." Another mile passed. Then Sophia said, "My husband died 6 months ago. Fever took him. His brother claimed the homestead, said a woman could not run it alone, and the law agreed with him. So I have nothing left in Nebraska except memories that hurt." "I am sorry," Samuel said quietly. "I do not want pity, I want a new start. I heard there are opportunities in California. Jobs, land, a chance to build something that is mine." Samuel nodded. "I am chasing something similar. My family is gone, farm is gone. Figured I would head west and see what I could make of myself. How old are you? Sophia asked suddenly. 25, you, 23. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder. You fought in the war, last 2 years of it, with the Union. You lose anyone, my brother, Andersonville. They both fell silent after that, the weight of all that death settling between them. But it was not an uncomfortable silence. It was the silence of two people who understood loss without needing to explain it. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Samuel said, "We should make camp soon. There is a creek bed about a mile ahead if I remember the landmarks right." Sophia looked like she wanted to argue, to keep walking through the night, but practical sense won out. All right. The creek was where Samuel remembered it, a thin ribbon of water cutting through the grassland. He unsaddled his horse while Sophia gathered dried buffalo chips for a fire. They worked in an easy rhythm, not speaking much, but aware of each other's movements. Samuel had some jerky and hardtack in his saddlebags, and Sophia produced a small sack of cornmeal. "I can make johnnycakes if you have a pan," she offered. "I do." Samuel retrieved it from his pack, and soon the smell of cornmeal cooking filled the air. As they ate, sitting on opposite sides of the small fire, Sophia said, "How long do you think it will take to get to California?" "On foot, 5 or 6 months if the weather holds and we do not run into trouble. Could be longer, could be shorter if we can get you a horse somewhere along the way." "I have $15, Sophia said. "I need to make it last. We will figure it out." Samuel poked at the fire with a stick. "There are trading posts and small settlements along the way. We can work for supplies when we need to." "Why are you being kind to me?" Sophia asked abruptly. "You do not know me." Samuel considered the question. "My mama raised me to help people when I could. And I guess, after the war, after all that death, it feels good to be heading somewhere with someone instead of just drifting alone. Makes it feel like I am moving towards something instead of just away." Sophia's expression softened slightly. "That makes sense." "You should sleep first," Samuel said. "I will take first watch." "Watch for what? We are in the middle of nowhere, coyotes, wolves, men who are worse than both." He said it matter-of-factly. "I will wake you in a few hours and you can take the second watch." Sophia looked like she wanted to argue, but exhaustion won out. She wrapped herself in a thin blanket she had pulled from her bag and lay down near the fire. Within minutes, her breathing had evened out into sleep. Samuel sat watching the flames and the stars overhead, thinking about the strange twists of fate that brought two people together. This morning he had been alone. Tonight he had something resembling a companion. He was not sure what to make of Sophia Hart yet. She was prickly and stubborn and clearly had been hurt enough to build walls around herself. But there was something about her determination that he admired. She could have given up, could have accepted her lot, but instead she was walking toward a new life. He woke her 4 hours later and she took his place by the fire without complaint. When he woke with the dawn, she had coffee boiling in his tin pot, the smell rich and wonderful in the cool morning air. "Where did you get coffee?" he asked, sitting up. "I saved some. Figured it was worth carrying for mornings like this." She poured him a cup, and he wrapped his hands around it gratefully. They ate a quick breakfast of the remaining johnnycakes and set out with the rising sun at their backs. The days began to form a pattern. Walking from dawn until the heat of the afternoon forced them to rest, then walking until near dark, setting camp, taking turns on watch, breaking camp at first light and starting again. Samuel found himself talking more than he had in months. Sophia was a good listener, and after the first few days, she began to open up as well. She told him about growing up in Ohio, about meeting her husband Thomas when she was 18, about the hope they had felt heading west to claim land under the Homestead Act. "We had 2 good years," she said one afternoon as they walked through a landscape that was beginning to shift from prairie grass to rougher terrain. "Built a cabin, planted crops. I thought we would grow old there." Her voice caught. "Then he got sick, and 3 weeks later he was gone. His brother showed up with a lawyer before Thomas was even cold in the ground." "That is a hard thing," Samuel said. "The worst part was how quickly I stopped mattering. I was Thomas's wife, but when he died, I was just a woman in the way, no rights, no claim, nothing." She kicked at a stone. "I will never put myself in that position again. Whatever I build in California will be mine. Just mine." Samuel understood that need for independence, even as part of him wondered what it would be like to build something with someone instead of alone. But he kept that thought to himself. 2 weeks into their journey, they reached a small settlement called Willow Creek, just a handful of buildings clustered around a trading post. Samuel traded some of his ammunition for supplies, and Sophia asked if there was any work to be had. The trading post owner, a grizzled man named McCready, looked her up and down. "You cook?" "Yes. My wife is laid up with a bad leg. Could use help in the kitchen for a few days if you are willing. Can pay in supplies and a little coin." Sophia glanced at Samuel, who nodded. "We can spare a few days." Those few days turned into a week. Sophia cooked for the trading post while Samuel helped McCready repair his roof and tend his stock. In the evenings, they would sit outside the small room McCready had given them, separate pallets on opposite sides but under the same roof, and talk about their plans. "I want land near the coast," Sophia said one night, stars wheeling overhead. "I want to be able to see the ocean." "Never seen the ocean myself," Samuel admitted. "They say it goes on forever, like these plains. But wet." Sophia laughed, a real laugh, and Samuel realized it was the first time he had heard that sound from her. It did something warm and unexpected to his chest. When they left Willow Creek, Sophia had a sturdy pair of boots to replace her worn-out ones, and Samuel had traded for a second horse, a smaller mare that Sophia could ride. "I cannot pay you for this," Sophia protested when he led the mare over. "Consider it an investment in getting to California before winter," Samuel said. "Besides, you earned half of it with your work here." Sophia ran her hand down the mare's neck. "What is her name?" McCready called her Dusty. "Dusty," Sophia repeated, and the horse's ear flicked toward her. "All right then, Dusty. Let us see if we can be friends." Riding instead of walking changed everything. They covered distance faster, and Sophia's mood lightened with each mile. Samuel caught her smiling sometimes as they rode, her face tilted toward the sun, and he had to remind himself not to stare. They followed the Platte River west through Nebraska, joining up briefly with a wagon train that was heading to Oregon. The company was good for a week, safety in numbers, but the train moved too slowly for Sophia's liking. "We should push ahead," she said one evening. "They are only making 10 miles a day." "It is safer with the group," Samuel pointed out. "It is slower, and safe is not the same as cautious. We have 2 horses, 2 guns now, and we know how to take care of ourselves." She had purchased a rifle with some of her wages from Willow Creek, and Samuel had been teaching her to shoot. He wanted to argue, but she was right. They had fallen into a good partnership, and they could move faster alone. "All right, we will leave in the morning." The wagon master tried to convince them to stay. "It is dangerous out there for just 2 people. You should at least wait until you can join another train." But Sophia was firm. "We appreciate the company, but we are moving on." Back on their own, the landscape began to change more dramatically. They entered Wyoming territory, and the flat plains gave way to rolling hills and distant mountains. The air grew thinner and cooler, even though it was full summer now. They celebrated the 4th of July in a tiny town called Redemption, Wyoming, where the locals had organized a dance and a shooting competition. Sophia entered the shooting competition and surprised everyone by placing third out of 20 entrants. "You have been practicing," Samuel said, pride evident in his voice. "You have been teaching," she replied, and their eyes met for a moment longer than necessary before she looked away. At the dance that evening, Samuel worked up the courage to ask her to dance. "I am not very good," he warned. "Neither am I," Sophia said, but she took his hand. They stumbled through a reel, laughing when they got the steps wrong, and then the music slowed to something gentler. Samuel put his hand on Sophia's waist, properly distant, and they swayed together under lantern light. "Thank you," Sophia said quietly, "for stepping on your feet, for coming with me, for not leaving when I was difficult, for teaching me to shoot and making sure I ate and all of it." Her voice was serious. "I could not have made it this far alone." "You would have found a way," Samuel said. "You are the most determined person I have ever met. Determined and stubborn are close cousins. I like both." Sophia looked up at him, something shifting in her expression, but then the song ended and other people crowded around, and the moment passed. They left Redemption the next morning and continued west. The land grew more rugged, and they had to navigate rocky terrain and swift running streams. Samuel's horse threw a shoe, and they spent a day in a mining camp while a blacksmith fixed it. The miners were rough men, hard living and suspicious of strangers, but they respected Sophia's straight talk and her ability to outshoot two of them when they challenged her. Samuel found himself feeling protective, staying close, but Sophia handled herself with a confidence that made it clear she did not need rescuing. One of the miners, a barrel-chested man named Dutch, offered to buy Dusty from them. "She is not for sale," Sophia said flatly. "I will give you a good price, more than she is worth." I said no. Dutch's expression darkened, but Samuel stepped forward. The lady said no. For a moment it looked like there might be trouble, but then Dutch shrugged and walked away. That night, though, Samuel insisted they camp well outside the mining camp, and they took turns on watch with loaded rifles across their laps. "Some men do not hear no," Sophia said during her watch, her voice tight with old anger. Samuel understood there was more behind that statement than just Dutch's offer, but he did not press. "He will not follow us. Men like that are too lazy to leave easy gold for a hard chase." He was right. They rode out the next morning without incident, but the encounter had shaken something loose between them. Sophia was quieter for the next few days, lost in thoughts she did not share. They crossed into Utah territory in late July, the heat oppressive and the water scarce. They rationed carefully, stopping at every creek and spring they could find. The landscape was stark and beautiful, red rocks rising like monuments to ancient gods. One afternoon, Sophia's horse stumbled, and she went down hard. Samuel was off his horse in an instant, running to her side. "Are you hurt?" Sophia sat up, wincing. "Just bruised, Dusty." The mare was favoring her front left leg. Samuel examined her carefully. "She is not broken, but she needs rest. Might be a few days before she can carry weight again." "We cannot afford a few days," Sophia said, frustration clear in her voice. "We cannot afford to lame your horse permanently, either." Samuel helped her to her feet. "There is a settlement about 10 miles south. I saw it on a map back at the mining camp. We can lead the horses there and see if there is a stable." The settlement was called Greenwater, which was optimistic given the brown scrub brush and dust that surrounded it. But it had a stable and a boarding house, and the woman who ran the boarding house took one look at Sophia's dusty, exhausted face and quoted them a fair price for a room and meals. "Just one room?" Samuel asked quietly. "We have 6 rooms and 5 of them are occupied." the woman, Mrs. Patterson, said, "but it has 2 beds." Samuel looked at Sophia, who nodded. "We will take it." The room was small but clean, with 2 narrow beds separated by a nightstand and a wash basin. They had been sleeping under the stars or in shared spaces for months now, but something about an actual room made it feel more intimate. "I will sleep on the floor," Samuel offered. "Do not be ridiculous. Those beds are barely big enough for 1 person each." Sophia set her bag on the bed nearest the window. "We are both adults. We can share a room." That night, lying in an actual bed for the first time in months, Samuel found himself intensely aware of Sophia's breathing across the room, the small sounds she made settling into sleep. He had grown used to her presence over the past months, looked forward to their conversations, found himself watching her when she was not looking. He realized with a start, falling in love with her. The thought should have scared him, but instead it felt inevitable, like the sun rising or the seasons changing. He had been moving toward this feeling with every mile they traveled together, but Sophia had been clear about her intentions. She wanted independence, something that was only hers. She did not want to belong to any man again, and Samuel respected that, even as his heart argued otherwise. The next few days in Greenwater gave them a chance to rest and resupply. Dusty recovered quickly, and Mrs. Patterson hired Sophia to help with the washing in exchange for a reduction in their boarding costs. Samuel found work at the stable, and in the evenings, they would sit on the porch of the boarding house and watch the sun set over the desert. "We are more than halfway there," Sophia said one evening. "By my calculation, anyway. Probably right. Another 2 months if the weather holds and the passes are clear." "What will you do when we get there? To California?" Samuel had been thinking about that question more and more. "I do not rightly know. Find work, I suppose, maybe try to get some land. What about you?" "I want to start a business. Maybe a bakery or a boarding house. Something practical that people need." She picked at a thread on her skirt. "I am good with numbers and I am a hard worker. I think I could make it succeed." "I know you could." Sophia looked at him, something soft in her expression. "You always believe in me, even when I am difficult." "You are not difficult, you are careful. There is a difference." "Sam." She said his name quietly, and his heart stuttered. "What is this? Between us?" He could have played dumb, but he respected her too much for that. "I think you know what it is, at least what it is for me. I told myself I would not do this again, would not give a man that kind of power over my life. I do not want power over you, Sophia. I just want to be near you, to keep traveling with you, working with you, talking with you. Whatever shape that takes is up to you." She was quiet for a long moment. "I am afraid. I know. When Thomas died, I thought I would die too. The grief was so big. I do not want to ever hurt like that again." Samuel reached across the space between their chairs and took her hand. "I cannot promise you that you will never hurt. Life does not work that way. But I can promise I will do my best to be worthy of whatever you are willing to give me." Sophia's fingers tightened around his. "I think I am falling in love with you, and it terrifies me." "I am already in love with you," Samuel admitted. "Has been growing for weeks now, maybe months." She turned to look at him fully, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "What do we do?" "We keep going to California. We build the lives we want, and we figure out how those lives fit together." He lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles gently. "No promises beyond that, just taking it one day at a time." "One day at a time," Sophia repeated, and then she smiled, real and warm. "I can do that." That night, they lay in their separate beds, but Sophia reached across the narrow space and found Samuel's hand in the darkness. They fell asleep like that, connected across the divide. They left Greenwater 3 days later, both of them stronger and their horses well rested. But something had shifted between them. The walls Sophia had built so carefully were coming down, piece by piece, and Samuel was patient with each one. She told him about her childhood, about a father who drank and a mother who died when she was 12. About raising her younger brother until he was old enough to enlist. About Thomas, who had been kind but distant, who had married her more for practical reasons than love. "I thought I loved him," she said one evening as they made camp in a small canyon. "But looking back, I think I loved the idea of being chosen, of having someone want me. We were partners, but not really in love. Does that make sense?" "It does," Samuel said. "My parents loved each other. I saw what that looked like. And what you are describing, that is different." "Did you ever love anyone before?" "I thought I did back before the war. A girl named Margaret. But I was 18 and stupid, and she married someone else while I was fighting. Turned out she had been courting him the whole time." He poked at the fire. "I was hurt, but I got over it fast enough. I do not think it was love, just youth." "What we have, this is different," Sophia said. It was not a question. "Yes," Samuel agreed. "This is different." They crossed into Nevada territory in August, and the heat was brutal. They traveled in the early mornings and late evenings, resting during the worst of the day's heat. Water was precious, and they planned their route carefully from spring to spring, creek to creek. One afternoon, they came across a family stranded with a broken wagon wheel. The father was trying to repair it while his wife and 3 children huddled in the shade of the wagon. Samuel and Sophia stopped to help. "We are heading to California," the man, whose name was Jenkins, explained. "Our train left us behind when we broke down, said they could not wait." "That is a cruel thing to do," Sophia said, her voice hard with anger. They spent the rest of the day helping Jenkins repair the wheel, and Sophia shared their supplies with the family. The children, aged 5, 7, and 9, were wide-eyed and silent with hunger. "You should travel with us for a few days," Samuel offered, "at least until you reach the next settlement." Jenkins looked relieved. "We would be grateful." For the next week, they traveled as a small group. The children warmed up to Sophia quickly, and Samuel watched as she told them stories and taught the oldest girl how to braid her hair. He could see her with children of her own someday, and the image made his chest tight with longing. When they reached a small Mormon settlement, Jenkins and his family decided to stay rather than risk the rest of the journey. They thanked Samuel and Sophia profusely, and the youngest child cried when they said goodbye. "Will you have children someday?" Samuel asked as they rode away. Sophia was quiet for a moment. "I always thought I would. Thomas and I tried, but it never happened. The doctor in town said maybe I could not, but I do not know if that is true or if it just was not meant to be with Thomas. Would you want to try again, if things were different?" "If things were different," Sophia said slowly, "yes, I think I would." They did not talk more about it, but Samuel carried that knowledge with him like a precious secret. The Sierra Nevada mountains loomed ahead of them as September arrived, and they knew they needed to cross before the snows came. They pushed harder, longer days and shorter rests, both of them feeling the urgency. At a trading post called Carson Crossing, they met a guide who offered to lead them through the pass. "Name is Reed," the man said. "Been through Donner Pass 20 times. I know the route and I know the weather. For $20 I will get you through safe." Samuel and Sophia pooled their remaining money. They had $43 between them, enough for the guide and a few supplies. "We need to leave in 3 days," Reed told them. "Weather is turning. Wait longer than that and we might not make it." Those 3 days were a flurry of preparation. They bought warmer clothes, extra food, grain for the horses. Sophia mended their blankets and oiled their saddles. Samuel checked their weapons and made sure everything was in good repair. The night before they left, they sat outside the trading post, watching the mountains turn purple in the fading light. "I am scared," Sophia admitted. "I have heard stories about Donner Pass." "Reed knows what he is doing," Samuel said, though he felt the same fear. "If something happens to me, I want you to know that these months with you have been the happiest of my life." She turned to look at him. "You gave me hope when I had none. You made me believe in good men again." "Nothing is going to happen to you," Samuel said fiercely. "We are going to make it through that pass, and we are going to California, and we are going to build the life you want." "The life we want," Sophia corrected softly. Samuel cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, gentle and full of promise. It was their first real kiss, and it tasted like hope and coming home all at once. When they pulled apart, Sophia was smiling. "About time," she murmured. "I was trying to be a gentleman." "I appreciate that, but we are past that now, I think." They kissed again, longer this time, and when they finally went to their separate rooms in the trading post, Samuel felt like he was walking on air. The crossing started well. Reed was a competent guide, and the weather held clear and cold. They followed narrow trails cut into the mountainside, leading the horses carefully over rocky terrain. Snow appeared in patches, then in drifts, then covering everything. On the third day, a storm rolled in. Reed pushed them to keep moving, to reach a shelter he knew about, but the snow came down so thick they could barely see. Samuel grabbed Sophia's hand and held tight, terrified of losing her in the whiteout. They made the shelter, a small cave that Reed had stocked with firewood on previous trips, but it was close. All three of them were shaking with cold, and the horses huddled together at the mouth of the cave. "We wait out the storm," Reed said. "Could be a day, could be 3. It was 2 days before the storm cleared enough to travel. They rationed their food carefully, and Samuel and Sophia huddled together for warmth under their combined blankets. Reed gave them privacy, sleeping on the opposite side of the fire. "I am glad I am not alone," Sophia whispered as they lay together, her back against Samuel's chest. "You will never be alone again," Samuel promised. "Not if I have anything to say about it." When they finally crossed over the summit and began the descent into California, all three of them cheered. The landscape opened up before them, green valleys and distant glimpses of gold country. They had made it. Reed left them in a small mining town called Dutch Flat, wishing them well. Samuel and Sophia continued west, following the American River down toward Sacramento and then beyond, toward the coast. The land was beautiful, lusher than anything they had seen since leaving Nebraska. Forests of tall trees, rivers running clear and cold, valleys full of farms and ranches. California felt like a promise kept. They reached Sacramento in late September and stayed for a week, working odd jobs and saving money. The city was growing fast, full of people seeking their fortunes, and opportunities were everywhere. But Sophia's eyes were always drawn west. "The ocean," she reminded Samuel. "I want to be near the ocean." They continued on, following the Sacramento River until it widened and became something bigger, salt smell mixing with fresh water. And then, finally, they reached the coast. Weaverville, California, was a small town nestled in the Trinity Mountains. Not on the coast proper, but close enough that on clear days you could see the Pacific in the distance. It had grown up around gold mining, but now it was settling into something more permanent. Shops and houses, a church, a school. People building lives instead of just chasing quick riches. "This could be it," Sophia said, standing on the main street and looking around. "This could be home." They found a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Chen, who had come from China with her husband during the gold rush. She had a room available, and when she learned that Samuel and Sophia were not married, she raised an eyebrow but did not comment. "Same room or separate?" she asked. Samuel looked at Sophia, who said, "Same room is fine, Mrs. Chen nodded. "I will need payment weekly, and if you want dinner included, that is extra." They took the room with dinners included, and that evening, sitting at Mrs. Chen's table with 3 other boarders, Sophia reached under the table and took Samuel's hand. Over the next few weeks, they settled into Weaverville. Samuel found work at a stable and then with a man who was building houses. Sophia started baking, selling pies and bread to the local restaurant and to individuals. Her baking was so good that people started placing orders, and she began to save money toward her own shop. At night, they would lie together in their narrow bed, talking about the future. They had traveled 2,000 miles together, from the Nebraska plains to the California coast, and somehow along the way they had built something real and solid. "I want to marry you," Samuel said one night in early November. "I know you said you did not want to belong to anyone, but I am not asking you to belong to me. I am asking if we can belong to each other." Sophia was quiet for a long moment, and Samuel's heart pounded. Then she said, "Yes, but I want to do it right. I want my own business established first. I want to go into this marriage as an equal with my own money and my own property." "I can wait," Samuel said. "I have waited this long. I can wait longer." "Not too long," Sophia said and kissed him. By January of 1868, Sophia had saved enough to rent a small storefront. Hart's Bakery opened on a cold morning, and Samuel was there to help her, along with Mrs. Chen and several other people they had befriended. The bakery was an immediate success, Sophia's skills and business sense combining into something profitable. Samuel proposed properly on Valentine's Day, with a ring he had saved for and commissioned from a local jeweler. They were married in March, with Mrs. Chen as a witness and half the town in attendance. Sophia wore a dress of soft blue, and Samuel could not stop looking at her. "I love you," he said when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife. "I have loved you since somewhere in Wyoming, I think, maybe earlier." "I love you too," Sophia said and kissed him in front of everyone. They bought a small piece of land on the edge of Weaverville, and Samuel built them a house with his own hands. It was not large, but it was sturdy and well made, with a view of the mountains and a garden plot for Sophia. They moved in on a warm day in June, carrying their few possessions across the threshold together. "This is ours," Sophia said, standing in the middle of the main room. "Really ours. No one can take it away." "No one can take it away," Samuel agreed. The bakery continued to thrive, and Samuel's carpentry business grew as Weaverville expanded. They worked hard, saved carefully, and built a life that was solid and good. In the evenings, they would sit on their porch and watch the sun set, talking about everything and nothing. Sophia got pregnant in the summer of 1869. She was nervous, remembering what the doctor in Nebraska had said, but this time was different. The pregnancy progressed normally, and in February of 1870, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Thomas, after Sophia's first husband, because she said, "He was not a bad man, just not the right one. But that part of my life led me to you, so I want to honor it." Samuel held his son and felt his heart expand in ways he had not known were possible. "He is perfect." "He looks like you," Sophia said, exhausted but smiling. Little Thomas was followed by a daughter, Lily, in 1872, and another son, James, in 1874. The house rang with children's laughter, and Samuel built additions to accommodate their growing family. The bakery expanded, and Sophia hired help so she could spend more time with the children. Samuel's business grew too, and he took on apprentices, teaching them the trade. They became pillars of the Weaverville community, known for their generosity and hard work. In 1880, on a warm spring evening, Samuel and Sophia sat on their porch while their children played in the yard. Thomas was 10 now, serious and thoughtful like his mother. Lily was 8, adventurous and bold. James was 6, with his father's easy smile. "Do you ever think about that day at the trading post?" Sophia asked. "When I said I would walk to California alone, all the time," Samuel admitted. "I think about how different my life would be if I had just ridden past you. I am glad you did not. I am glad you let me come with you." Sophia leaned her head on his shoulder. "It was never really alone after that, was it? From the moment you said you were going that direction too?" "No," Samuel agreed. "Not alone, together." They watched their children play the life they had built spread out before them. It had not been easy, the journey from Nebraska to California or the years of work that followed. But it had been worth every hard mile, every moment of doubt, every sacrifice. "I love you," Sophia said. "I love you too," Samuel replied. "Always have, always will." As the sun set over the Trinity Mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold that reminded them both of long-ago evenings on the trail, they sat together in comfortable silence. Two people who had been alone, who had found each other, who had built something beautiful and lasting. The years continued to pass with the steady rhythm of a life well lived. Samuel and Sophia watched their children grow, helped them navigate the challenges of youth, and celebrated their successes. Thomas inherited his mother's head for business and eventually took over managing the bakery's accounts, expanding it into a small chain with locations in 3 neighboring towns. Lily became a teacher, fierce and passionate about education, especially for girls who might otherwise be overlooked. James followed his father into carpentry and proved to have an artistic eye, crafting furniture that people traveled from as far as San Francisco to commission. Samuel and Sophia became grandparents in 1892, when Thomas married a young woman named Caroline and they had a daughter. More grandchildren followed, 7 in total, and the house that had once seemed so spacious with just the 2 of them now overflowed during holidays and Sunday dinners. "Sometimes I forget I am getting old," Samuel said one evening in 1895. He was 53 now, his hair more silver than brown but still strong from years of physical work. "We are not old," Sophia protested, though at 51 she had her own gray hairs and laugh lines that deepened with every smile. "We are experienced. You always were the optimist." "That is not true. You were the one who believed we could make it to California. You were the one who decided to walk there in the first place." They laughed together, the easy laughter of people who had shared decades of joys and sorrows, who knew each other better than they knew themselves. The town of Weaverville had grown and changed around them, but Samuel and Sophia remained constants, part of the foundation upon which the community was built. They were asked for advice, sought out for wisdom, respected for their integrity. The story of how they met, of Sophia's determination to walk to California and Samuel's quiet insistence that she not go alone, became something of a local legend, told and retold until it took on an almost mythical quality. But the truth, Samuel thought, was better than any legend. The truth was in the small moments. Sophia's hand in his as they walked to church, the way she still brought him coffee in the morning, how he still built things for her without being asked. The truth was in the life they had created together, not perfect but real and hard-won and theirs. In the spring of 1900, as the new century dawned, Samuel and Sophia took a trip to the coast, something they had always meant to do but had never quite found the time for. They stood on the beach, waves crashing at their feet, and Sophia said, "I made it, to California and the ocean." "We made it," Samuel corrected gently. "No," Sophia said, turning to look at him. "I made it to California, but we made it to this life, this beautiful, impossible life." Tears tracked down her cheeks. When I left Nebraska, I thought I was heading toward independence. I did not know I was really heading toward you." Samuel pulled her close, holding her as they watched the endless Pacific stretch toward the horizon. "Best direction I ever traveled." They returned to Weaverville to find their home full of family who had gathered to celebrate their 30th wedding anniversary. The house and yard overflowed with children and grandchildren, friends and neighbors, all the people their lives had touched over the years. Thomas stood to make a toast. "To my parents, who showed me that love is not just a feeling but a choice you make every day, who built something from nothing and taught us all what it means to work hard and live honestly." Lily added, "To my mother, who taught me that a woman can be both strong and soft, independent and loving, and to my father, who showed me what a good man looks like." James raised his glass. "To the two people who traveled 2,000 miles to find each other and build a home. May we all be so lucky." As the gathering continued into the evening, Samuel and Sophia found themselves back on their porch, watching the celebration from a distance. "It is a good life," Sophia said softly. "The best," Samuel agreed. "Do you ever regret it?" "Tying yourself to me instead of remaining free." Samuel looked at her, this woman who had walked into his life with nothing but determination and a canvas bag, who had become his partner, his love, his home. "Not for one single moment. You were never a burden, Sophia. You were the destination." She kissed him then, sweet and tender, a kiss that held 3 decades of love and counting. The years after 1900 were gentler, slower. Samuel and Sophia both scaled back their work, letting the younger generation take over while they enjoyed the fruits of their labor. They traveled a bit, visiting their children and grandchildren, taking trips to places they had always wanted to see. They went back to Nebraska once, visiting Sophia's old homestead and the grave of her first husband, paying respects to the past that had led them to each other. They also retraced parts of their original journey, taking the train this time instead of walking and riding. They stopped in Willow Creek, where the trading post was now run by McCready's grandson. They visited Redemption, Wyoming, and laughed at how small it seemed compared to their memories. They stood at Carson Crossing and looked up at Donner Pass, remembering the storm and the fear and how they had held each other through it all. "We were so young," Sophia marveled. "I was just 23. You were 25. We barely knew each other." "I knew enough," Samuel said. "I knew you were someone worth knowing better." In 1910, they celebrated 40 years of marriage with a quiet dinner, just the two of them, at the house Samuel had built so long ago. Their children had wanted to throw a big party, but Samuel and Sophia had insisted on something simple. 40 years, Sophia said, looking at their wedding photograph, faded now with age. "We have been together longer than we were apart." "And I would do it all again," Samuel said. "Every mile, every moment." They made love that night, gentle and slow, bodies that knew each other completely, love that had only deepened with time. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, Sophia said, "Promise me something, anything. When one of us goes, the other has to keep living. Really living, not just existing. We have built too much, loved too much for the one who is left behind to give up." Samuel's throat tightened. "Sophia, promise me, Sam." "I promise," he whispered. "If you promise the same, I promise." They fell asleep like that, holding each other, the promise hanging between them like a prayer. Samuel died in the winter of 1915, suddenly and without warning. He was helping James build a barn when his heart simply stopped. He was 73 years old, and he died doing what he loved, surrounded by family. Sophia grieved deeply, but she kept her promise. She continued running the bakery, spending time with her grandchildren, participating in town events. She planted a garden every spring and sat on her porch every evening, talking to Samuel as if he were still beside her, telling him about her day. "I miss you," she would say to the empty chair. "But I am living just like I promised. I am living for both of us now." She lived to be 82 years old, sharp-minded and strong-willed until the very end. In the spring of 1926, surrounded by her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, Sophia Hart Irving passed away peacefully in her sleep. They buried her next to Samuel on the plot of land where their house still stood. The headstones were simple. Samuel Irving, 1842, 1915, beloved husband and father, and Sophia Hart Irving, 1844-1926, beloved wife and mother. But beneath those words, at Lily's insistence, they added an inscription that told the real story. She said she would walk to California alone. He said, "Not alone, I am going that direction too." And together they built a life. The house Samuel built still stands in Weaverville, now maintained by the Historical Society. The bakery that Sophia started is still in operation, run by her great-great-grandchildren. And on quiet evenings, when the sun sets over the Trinity Mountains painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, locals say you can almost see them. Two figures sitting on the porch, hand in hand, watching the day fade into night. It is just a story, of course, the kind that grows in the telling. But the truth remains, solid and real as the house itself. Once there was a woman who decided to walk to California alone, and a man who refused to let her go that direction without him. They traveled 2,000 miles together, fell in love along the way, and built something that lasted not just their lifetimes but echoed down through generations. Thomas Hart Irving, named for a man who came before, now long gone himself, left behind journals about his parents that his own children found after his death in 1940. In fading ink, he wrote, "My mother told me once that the day she met my father, she was running from grief. She thought she wanted to be alone, to never need anyone again. But my father understood something she did not yet know, that true partnership does not diminish independence but amplifies it, that two people traveling together can go further than either would alone." He gave her space to be herself while being steadfast in his presence, and she gave him purpose and love and a home. They gave each other everything, and in doing so, created something bigger than either of them. That is their legacy, not the bakery or the house or even us children, but the example of what love can be when it is built on respect, trust, and the simple daily choice to keep walking together in the same direction. Years turn to decades, decades to centuries, and stories fade. But some truths remain constant as the mountains, deep as the ocean Sophia so longed to see. That courage comes in many forms, that the right person at the right time can change the entire trajectory of a life. That sometimes the best journeys are the ones we do not take alone. And that when someone says they are going your direction too, it might just be the beginning of the greatest adventure of all.